The 2026 World Cup kicked off 2 days ago at the Aztec in Mexico City. The football has been played. Goals have been scored. The tournament that took 8 years to build and generated more pre-tournament controversy than any in recent memory is finally actually happening. And the conversation, instead of being entirely about the football, keeps returning to everything around it. The people who could not get here, the seats that are not filled, the referee who was turned away at the airport, the heat that is testing players in ways that nobody has fully resolved, the commercial machinery that has wrapped itself around the game so completely that some supporters are struggling to find the football underneath it. Today is June 13th, 2 days into the biggest World Cup in history, and the story being told around this tournament is still two stories simultaneously. The football on the pitch, which has already produced moments worth remembering, and everything off it, which is producing a different kind of history entirely. Let us go through all of it. Every issue, every genuine controversy, every uncomfortable truth sitting alongside the matches. Because the fans who love this game deserve a complete and honest account of what this tournament is revealing about the state of the sport and the organization that runs it. We start with the issue that more than any other has defined the first days of this World Cup. The issue that a professor of sport, who is also a former professional footballer, described with two words that have been quoted more widely than almost anything else said about this tournament: World Cup of Exclusion. That phrase, a World Cup of Exclusion, captures what the visa and entry crisis has produced in the opening days of June 2026, and the specific cases that have emerged are not abstract statistics. They are individual human stories that tell you exactly what has gone wrong and how completely. Omar Artan, a decorated referee from Somalia, named as the CAF Best Male Referee of 2025, selected by FIFA to officiate at this World Cup, set to become the first ever Somali match official in World Cup history, a genuine milestone in African football's relationship with the game's biggest stage. He landed at Miami International Airport. He was denied entry. A United States official stated he was refused admission due to association with suspected members of terror organizations. No further details were provided. FIFA confirmed he would be unable to train or officiate at the tournament. He has since returned to Istanbul. A FIFA-appointed referee carrying FIFA credentials, selected through FIFA's own process, denied entry to a FIFA World Cup by the immigration authorities of the tournament's primary host country. FIFA's response to this, and to the broader visa crisis, came from its president at a press conference in Mexico City. He said, "It is unfortunate what happened to the referee from Somalia, but we don't control everything." He added that maybe sometimes it is good to chill and relax. Chill and relax about a FIFA-appointed referee being turned away at the airport of the tournament he was selected to officiate. That response has generated its own wave of criticism, not because the underlying statement is entirely wrong. FIFA does not control national immigration authorities, but because the tone and the context of what has happened struck many football people as inadequate to the scale of the problem. Artan's case is the sharpest individual story, but it is far from isolated. At least one player has been held up or denied at the border. Multiple team staff members across several nations have had visa applications rejected. Federation leaders have faced entry complications. Journalists covering the tournament, including accredited media, have encountered widespread visa denials or been restricted to single entry limits that complicate the coverage of a month-long tournament across 3 countries. Iran's federation reported that the United States would only permit the team to enter 1 day before any match. 1 day for a professional football team preparing for a World Cup game. No extended preparation period on American soil. Cross the border the day before. Play, cross back, repeat for every game. At least 15 officials and support staff of the Iranian team were affected by entry denials or complications. The team based itself in Tijuana, Mexico, and commuted across the border for matches. Their official ticket allocation was reportedly withdrawn days before their opener against New Zealand. Dozens of fans from Morocco, a nation that reached a semi-final in Qatar, whose traveling supporters are among the most passionate and most celebrated at any tournament, were denied travel visas despite being ticket holders. They had the tickets, they had the documentation, they could not get the entry. 4 countries playing in this tournament, Iran, Haiti, Cote and Senegal, are on restricted travel lists that created specific barriers for their supporters that fans from other nations did not face. The 15 countries on the immigrant visa suspension list that have qualified for this World Cup include Brazil, Algeria, Morocco, Colombia, Egypt, Ghana, Uruguay, and Tunisia, among others. Human Rights Watch described the situation plainly. The United States has created a hostile environment for players, fans, and journalists. An environment where even ticket holders risk phone searches, interrogation, and detention if their social media accounts contain criticism of the current administration. That is not a theoretical risk. That is a documented reality that has shaped the decisions of thousands of people considering whether to travel to this tournament. The fan from Segal who decided not to come. The journalist from a restricted country who could not secure multi-entry access. The federation official who was turned back at an airport. The football is supposed to bring the world together. The entry policies of the primary host nation have made parts of the world unable to attend. Canada offered something in response to the Artan situation that deserves acknowledgement. The country invited the denied Somali referee to officiate at World Cup matches taking place on Canadian soil. It was a small gesture in practical terms, but it said something significant about the difference between how the three host nations have navigated the access question. Now let us talk about what is happening inside the stadiums, because the empty seat issue has moved from a pre-tournament concern to a visible, documented, publicly embarrassing reality. South Korea's 2-1 victory over Czech Republic in Guadalajara. FIFA reported an official attendance of 44,985 in a 46,000-seat venue. Television broadcasts and photographs from inside the stadium showed large sections of empty seats throughout the match. The images were immediate, and they were shared everywhere. A World Cup match in a nearly sold-out stadium that looked from the inside considerably less than full. Fans online were direct in their response. One comment read, "This is embarrassing." Another said, "No one believes you. You are ruining football." FIFA's explanation referenced no-shows, people who had tickets but did not attend. It's the same explanation the organization has used at previous tournaments when the attendance numbers and the visual reality have diverged. It is not an implausible explanation. No-shows happen at every major event. But the scale and the consistency of the visual gap between announced attendances and visible crowds has generated a credibility problem that FIFA's standard responses are not resolving. Around 25,000 seats remain available through FIFA's main ticketing platform as of the opening days of the tournament. The organization has released several last-minute batches in an attempt to fill the gaps. The dynamic pricing system that generated legal investigations and consumer complaints has been adjusted multiple times. The 3 state attorneys general investigations remain open. The fundamental problem has not changed. The pricing decisions made months ago priced out the fans who would have filled those seats. Naturally, the late adjustments and last-minute releases are corrective actions taken after the window for proper planning had already closed. The fan who could not book affordable accommodation in October because the prices were too high is not arriving in June because some tickets became cheaper in the final week. The trip that required months of planning cannot be assembled in days. The empty seats are the physical evidence of decisions made at the top of the organization and felt at the bottom by the people who simply wanted to be there. Let us talk about the heat, because this is the issue where the gap between the organization's stated commitments and the physical reality of what players and fans are experiencing has become most visible and most urgent. Temperatures during the opening matches in certain American host cities have reached levels that have triggered the mandatory hydration breaks FIFA introduced 3 minutes in each half, during which players can rest and drink. During those breaks, tournament broadcasters have the option to use the time for commercial advertising, a mandatory health measure in extreme heat, also available as commercial inventory. Players signed a public letter in May calling for FIFA to take stronger action on heat protocols. Fifth Pro has been clear throughout the preparation period that 3 minutes is insufficient for players to adequately hydrate in the conditions being experienced. The medical science on this is not ambiguous. Rehydration in extreme heat requires more time and more volume than a 3-minute break allows. The weather delays that occurred repeatedly during the Club World Cup, the tournament staged in these same venues last summer as a direct rehearsal for this one, demonstrated that the problem was real and documented before the World Cup began. 6 weather-related delays in the first 50 Club World Cup matches. The experience was there. The data was there. The 3-minute break is the response that was implemented. Queen's University Belfast had warned as early as January 2025 that wet bulb globe temperatures in certain host cities were higher than Qatar in the winter, the tournament that generated enormous pre-event criticism over heat conditions. The 2026 tournament in the North American summer in cities like Dallas and Houston presents heat challenges that in some respects exceed what players faced in the Gulf. Industrial misting fans have been deployed at SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. Cooling stations exist. The infrastructure response is real, but the scheduling of afternoon matches in cities with extreme summer temperatures remains a genuine player welfare concern that the equipment cannot fully address. Now let us talk about the commercial layer, because the advertisement criticism has been consistent and specific enough to deserve serious examination. FIFA introduced mandatory 3-minute hydration breaks in each half, and simultaneously made those breaks available for commercial use by broadcasters. That single decision captured something that supporters and commentators have been trying to articulate throughout the tournament's build-up. The commercial considerations and the football considerations are not always in conflict at this World Cup, but they are always present simultaneously. And when they appear in the same decision, a health break that is also an ad break, the priority ordering becomes visible. The broader advertisement situation around this tournament has generated criticism on multiple fronts. The volume of commercial messaging across official broadcasts has been noted by viewers. Major sponsors released World Cup campaigns that drew negative reactions from fans who found the artificial representation of football supporters jarring in a tournament that is supposed to celebrate authentic human connection to the game. Over half of FIFA's 20 official sponsors had not yet released any World Cup campaign by the time the tournament began. The brands that moved early set the tone for how the commercial layer of this tournament feels to viewers, and the dominant feeling has been one of saturation rather than celebration. The criticism of over-commercialization is not new to football. It has been building for years across multiple competitions and multiple governing bodies. But the 2026 World Cup, with its $11 billion revenue projection, its 100% ticket revenue capture, its advertisement breaks embedded into health protocols, has brought that criticism to a specific and concentrated point. The sport that belongs to the people who love it is generating revenues that dwarf anything in its history. While the people who love it are being priced out, turned away at borders, watching from stadiums that look emptier than the official numbers suggest, and seeing their mandatory health breaks sold to advertisers. That is the commercial picture, and it deserves to be named directly. Now let us talk about the host nation conflict, because the tension between what FIFA promised and what the United States has delivered has produced a genuine fault line running through the organizational structure of this tournament. FIFA's own hosting guidelines include human rights criteria. The 2026 games were the first to have those criteria formally embedded in the bidding process. Every host city published a plan declaring the ways it would promote human rights and access and inclusion. The reality of the visa situation, the referee denied entry, the fans turned away, the team staff excluded, the journalists restricted, sits in direct tension with those stated commitments. FIFA's formal position is that it does not control host country immigration processes and has no authority over visa educations. That is legally accurate. It is also organizationally inconvenient because the organization that embedded human rights criteria in its hosting requirements and then awarded those rights to a country whose entry policies have produced this level of exclusion bears some responsibility for the gap between the promise and the reality. Canada's invitation to Artan illustrated what a different host nation response looks like. The contrast between how Canada and Mexico have navigated the human element of this tournament and the complications arising from American entry policies has been noted by football observers and supporter organizations throughout the opening days. The fan experience at the opening ceremony and early matches has generated its own specific criticism. Reports from supporters inside venues have described uneven experiences, long queues for basic facilities, inconsistent stewarding, fan zones that felt underprepared for the numbers attending, and a general sense that the organization at the ground level in certain venues has not matched the ambition of the tournament's marketing. This is not universal. Some venues in some cities have delivered experiences that supporters have described positively. The atmosphere at the Aztec for the opening match generated the kind of noise and color that a World Cup opening should produce. Mexican football culture proved exactly as deep and as real as everyone who understands that culture expected. But the experience has been uneven, and uneven is not what a tournament marketed as the greatest in football history should be delivering in its opening days. So, where does all of this leave the 2026 World Cup as it enters its third day? The football is happening. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, everything, or at least the most important thing. The players who have worked their entire careers for this moment are on the pitch. Japan are in their group, Morocco are in theirs, England are preparing, France are preparing, Argentina are carrying the last chapters of a golden generation onto the biggest stage in sport. All 48 nations are competing in the tournament they qualified for, and the football will produce moments. It always does. A goal that nobody expected, a performance that rewrites a nation's football history, a match that runs to extra time, and then penalties, and then the single kick that determines everything. The game has never failed to deliver those moments. It will not fail here. But the story being written around those moments, the referee who was turned away, the fans who could not come, the empty seats in stadiums that should be full, the heat breaks that double as commercial breaks, the legal investigations that are still open, the workers who almost went on strike, the pricing that excluded the people who should be the tournament's heartbeat. That story is being written simultaneously, and it will be part of how 2026 is remembered, not instead of the football, alongside it permanently. The professor who called this a World Cup of exclusion was pointing at something real. A tournament with more teams than ever, more matches than ever, more revenue than ever, and more people unable to attend than perhaps any edition in the modern era. The contradiction between the scale of the ambition and the narrowing of the access is the defining tension of this tournament. FIFA's president said to chill and relax about a referee denied entry, about fans turned away at borders, about legal investigations into ticketing practices. The fans who love this game are not going to chill and relax about this, because they understand what the World Cup is supposed to be, and they can see the gap between that and what it has become. The question worth sitting with today, 2 days into the biggest World Cup in history, is whether the people running football are watching the same tournament the rest of us are. I would genuinely be curious what you think of everything happening off the pitch at this tournament. The visa crisis, the empty seats, the heat, the commercial saturation. What concerns you most? And do you think the football can still produce something that overshadows all of it? Leave your answer below. This community has been honest about this tournament from the beginning. Stay with us as it develops. Subscribe if this kind of football journalism is what brings you here. We are covering every match and every story around the matches all the way to July.